What do you do when life gets really hard? And on top of that, you're trying to not completely lose yourself when it comes to your healthy habits, your routines, your weight loss, momentum, and your ability to keep on taking care of yourself in the middle of it all. Because this is something that happens to almost every woman eventually. It's one thing to be able to take care of yourself when life feels calm and manageable and straightforward, but it's an entirely different thing to be able to do this when you're completely overwhelmed, when you're grieving, when you're emotionally exhausted, and when your stress levels are through the roof, when life blindsides you with things that you never expected. And on top of that, you're still supposed to try to eat well and move your body and try to manage your sleep and support your metabolism and not lose all the progress you've made and completely fall apart. That's what I'm talking with you about today, how to handle that all. If you're new here, my name is Genny Tonin. I'm a holistic nutritionist. And on this channel, I talk about metabolism, weight loss after 40, hormones, mindset, stress, and really learning how to care for yourself as best you can in a realistic and sustainable way. And one thing that we don't talk about nearly enough in the health space is what happens when real life hits, because supporting your metabolism is not just about getting enough protein and doing your workouts and taking the right supplements. Stress matters a lot. And let me be clear, I'm not talking about trying to create some stress-free life, because that's not realistic. Life is always going to happen. Hard things happen to all of us. Unexpected things happen. So the goal is never to eliminate our stress, but instead, the goal is to learn how to support yourself through stress in a healthier way, without the shame, without guilt, and without completely abandoning yourself and trying to pick up the pieces of your health practice every time life gets difficult. Because I have seen this happen time and time again for so many women. They're doing really well, they're working with me, and they start gaining momentum and progress. They start finally feeling better and seeing the results for themselves. And then life blindsides you. Suddenly, the routines are gone. Your motivation, your momentum, your energy drops off a cliff. You feel emotionally exhausted. And then, along with all of that, here comes the guilt and the shame and that self-criticism, that those thoughts and feelings and voices in your head that tell you that you're failing because you're not handling things perfectly. And honestly, I think that this is one of the most under-acknowledged struggles that women deal with when it comes to taking care of themselves. And the reason I'm making this video today is because April was one of those months for me. So 2026, it started off intense and it's escalated from there. I have a mother-in-law that's ailing, to put it mildly. My beloved dog Louie has a leg injury that's been really consuming for me emotionally and mentally. But then, and there's been other stuff, but then April, well, everything got amplified. At the beginning of the month, I had a family member that I love, I'm gonna try to get through this video without crying, pass away unexpectedly. And that sent shockwaves through my family. And grief is such a strange thing, because life doesn't stop even though you're processing it. You still have responsibilities. You still have people that depend on you, and you still have all the things that you need to do. And then a couple weeks after that happened, I had somebody else born into my family, which normally would be a really joyous thing. But this person is facing really extreme health challenges that aren't going to go away. So it's been a really emotionally and honestly difficult time for me. I'm trying to process all of this, and a lot of these experiences are totally new for me. I said I was going to try to get through this without crying. I guess I didn't do that. But all of this is happening on top of everything else that's going on in my day-to-day life. And physically, this has taken a toll on me, not just mentally, not just emotionally. My stress levels have gone through the roof. I actually have had a patch of eczema on my face. You can't see it because I have makeup on, but that's not something I've ever dealt with in my entire life. And it's such a clear reflection of what's going on internally. Stress affects us emotionally, mentally, and physically. And I had this moment amidst all of this where I thought to myself, okay, like this is one of those seasons in life. And I need to be really intentional about how I navigate it so that I don't entirely lose myself amidst that process, because I've seen that happen. I'm sharing all of this with you because I know I'm not alone in this. I am painfully aware of how many other beautiful women out there are quietly carrying really heavy stuff right now. The details maybe are different, right? For some, it's divorce. For some, it's financial worries or a health crisis, or there's so many things. But even though the details are different, the feelings are the same. Trying to navigate this, the feeling of trying to hold yourself together while life is chaotic and difficult around you, trying to figure out how do I keep on taking care of myself when I barely even have the emotional bandwidth for everything else. So today, I want to help you with all of that. And this is not coming from some perfectionist mentality where you just have to double down and try harder. This is coming from a place of real life when I'm in the thick of it. So today I'm going to walk you through 3 shifts that have genuinely helped me through this season of my life without completely losing myself in the process. So the first thing, and this has helped me tremendously, is shifting away from that perfectionism and instead focusing on what I call my MVS. And that stands for my minimum viable standard. And what that looks like to you and to me, not necessarily going to be the same thing. But most of us are taught to think in extremes, especially when it comes to health and weight loss in the online space, right? The theme is always do it perfectly or you're failing, right? There's no middle ground. And that's annoying on so many levels. But that exact mindset is what causes so many people to just totally abandon their habits during these hard parts of life that, again, are inevitable. So instead of doing that and just foregoing all of the things that I know can help me, I started to ask myself, what is the minimum that I can realistically do right now and yet still support myself? And honestly, April was anything but my ideal routine. I barely worked out compared to what I normally do. My energy was lower. My tolerance for things was lower. My focus was scattered. Emotionally, I've been carrying a lot. But the point is, I didn't completely let go of myself. If all I had in me on a certain day was a walk, well, then that was my minimum viable standard that day. I took the walk. If all I could manage was to scrounge up one decent meal that provided me and my family with nourishment, then I focused on that. And I considered those things wins, because during those hard seasons of life, your goal is not optimization. Your goal is to preserve as best you can what you already have. During these times, you're protecting your momentum, you're protecting your nervous system, you're protecting your relationship with yourself and with those around you. And those things all matter. Now, the second thing is this. I want you, if you're going through something hard, to stop layering shame and guilt on top of an already difficult situation, because I see women do that constantly. And I have been guilty of that too on so many occasions. And I'm not shaming myself for that. Let's be clear. Life gets hard, but then there's this weird thing where we as women tend to attack ourselves for struggling when it's hard, saying things like, I should be doing better, or I should be doing this, or I should be doing that, or I shouldn't be doing this, what I call shoulding all over yourself. Or they say things like, I'm falling behind, I'm letting myself go, I can't believe that I'm back here again. And that whole emotional spiral, it often becomes even more damaging than the stressful situation itself. So one thing that I was really one thing that I was really intentional about this past month was not emotionally beating myself up for being a freaking human. I refused to shame myself because I wasn't going at 100%. I was going through difficult things. Expecting myself to do that and still carry on perfectly, that's not realistic, and that's not going to help. What that does is it just ends up creating even more stress, and that creates more inflammation, that creates more exhaustion. And honestly, I think that so many women need permission to stop making the hard periods of our life even harder by turning on ourselves. Now, the third shift is really important because when life gets overwhelming, well, your habits can start to feel like pressure. They can feel like one more thing on your plate, items that you need to tick off on a to-do list. And I want you to understand this, that your healthy habits, the things that are good for you, they're not punishment. They're support. And these are things like your sleep and your nutrition and your movement and your stress management practices. And these are things that they actually help you to hold yourself together physically, mentally, and emotionally when life is anything but stable. And I actually, several months ago, created a free download. It's called Align and Rise. It's a morning meditation ritual, and it has a companion guide that's exactly for times like this. Because during times like this, oftentimes what we need is something nice and simple and straightforward that can help ground us and just bring us a bit of calm and clarity again. Something that helps you to reconnect with yourself before the chaos of the day and life takes over. So if right now in your life you are feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling emotionally heavy right now, well, I'll link it below in the description and you can download it and start using it. It's completely free and it can help. It can be such a powerful help in the good times, but especially in hard times like this. All of this has reminded me about a book that I read several years ago by J.J. Virgin, and it's called Miracle Mindset. And that book always really stayed with me. So she wrote that book after her son was really critically hurt in a hit and run accident, and he had traumatic brain injury. He was spending all kinds of time in the hospital. For a while, she didn't know if he was going to make it. One of the major takeaways from this book is that taking care of yourself in these difficult seasons is anything but selfish. And let me say that again clearly so that it really hits home for you. Your self-care is not selfish. Your self-care is necessary in order for you to be able to help those around you, to help yourself to navigate these times. Caring for yourself is what gives you the strength and the resilience to continue carrying what life has asked you to carry. So if you are going through a difficult period of your life right now, here's what I want you to focus on to help this situation as best you can. So first of all, define your MVS, your minimum viable standard. What's realistic for you right now so that you're not being perfect, not ideal, but what can you do? Maybe that changes day to day, but what is your minimum viable standard to help you navigate this as best you can? Next is to make sure that you're nourishing yourself to the best of your capacity. At the very least, make sure that each day you're eating one consistent, nourishing meal. Now, that doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as grabbing a rotisserie chicken at the grocery store and maybe a box of salad greens or an avocado or a jar of olives. And that's not going to take you any more time, and it's not going to cost you any more money than ordering a pizza or hitting the drive-thru. Next, if you usually work out, lower the bar for your movement, but don't stop moving. Walk, stretch, do some yoga, do a breath work practice, get outside. JJ Virgin in that book, she ran the stairs in the hospital while her son was lying in the bed. And normally for me, working out is a great stress relief. But this past month, I just didn't have it in me. So walks became my best friend. And if you're not currently working out, then I can't encourage you enough to start walking. When you're going through stressful periods, walking helps you to process the difficult things so much more effectively, especially if you do it outside and you get fresh air and natural daylight and all of those beneficial things that come with moving outside. The point is, do something small instead of doing nothing and celebrate that win. Next, I encourage you to do your best to protect your sleep however you can. And I know that for a lot of us, when we're going through a stressful period in life, sleep can become really challenging, but your nervous system and your metabolism, your hormones, your mental state, they all require good sleep. So we want to do our best with that. So creating some kind of bedtime routine, making sure that we do our best to get to bed at a reasonable hour as often as possible, doing something to help us decompress and wind down before we go to sleep. Maybe that is writing in our journal. Maybe it's having a cup of herbal tea. Maybe it's having a little relaxing shower before bed. I mean, it doesn't have to be elaborate or time consuming, but getting our rest in stressful periods is enormously important. And finally, I want you to stop speaking to yourself negatively, talking to yourself like you're failing or like you're not doing enough, because that's not true. You're navigating a difficult part of your life, and that's a very different thing. And now I want to say the next part gently, because I know that these seasons of life can be incredibly painful and difficult. I'm right there with you. But in the Chinese language, there's a character for crisis that contains both the characters for danger and opportunity at once. And while the exact interpretation is quite nuanced, the idea about this is what's important here, because in every crisis situation, there is danger and there is pain and there is going to be disruption. And there are absolutely things that we would have never chosen. And I'm not trying to minimize any of that into some cliche where we pretend that hard things are automatically good, because that's not at all what I mean here. But difficult seasons often do create turning points in our lives. They create moments where we have that opportunity to be able to discover something about ourselves that we might not have otherwise recognized. So these hard periods of our life, they give us an opportunity to learn how to care for ourselves differently, more honestly, more sustainably, and more compassionately, which to me are all wonderful things. But they also give us this opportunity to remember how strong and capable we really are. And so often we don't give ourselves enough credit for that. But when you continue showing up for yourself, even if it's imperfect during these hard seasons in our life, well, it changes something inside of you because you start to realize that you really can handle hard things, that you can support yourself through difficult seasons, and that you can keep going. And this creates a completely different kind of empowerment, which I am all about helping women to become more empowered. Because when you can continue to show up for yourself in those hard phases of life, well, it changes the game entirely. It shows you how capable you are, and it reminds you how competent you are. It reminds you that you're not nearly as fragile as you might feel in this moment. And that gives you a kind of self-trust that is so powerful. And this is something that my Uncle Jim, my dearly departed Uncle Jim, that was like a father to me, would reference as a blessing in disguise. And he coached me through so many of these hard seasons of my life. And in this hard season of my life, I'm really missing him. So if you are in a hard period right now, I really want you to hear this. You don't need to do everything perfectly to keep on moving forward. And you are absolutely not failing just because life is heavy right now. And these are things that helped me to get through the past month without losing myself completely. And these things are how I'll continue to navigate this season of my life. And so if this video helped you, if it resonated with you, then I invite you to consider liking it and subscribing. It helps me out. It helps this channel out, but it also helps other women that are in the midst of all of this, who are quietly struggling. It helps them to find this message when maybe they need it the most. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.